Welcome to the Metaphysics Hour. I'm your host, Rory Colgan. Today we are going to talk about another universal law. This universal law is called the law of prosperity, and it is connected pretty intimately with the law of abundance, which episode 14 dealt with specifically. Now, to give you a brief overview of universal laws, each law is independent but also interdependent. So it operates in a way that is unique to itself, hence it gets the categorization of a universal law, but it always works in concert with the other universal forces. And I don't know about you, but here on YouTube and throughout the world of channels and surfings and video podcasts and MP3s and podcasts, there tends to be an emphasis on the avoidance of philosophy or the total immersion in philosophy. And sometimes either of those two camps can be way off what I would consider to be a very natural and native state. So this channel is to help all of us get back to something that is natural and native, and at the same time continually progress through society's primitive dark age, which we are slowly coming out of and starting to embrace a real civilization, something that is based upon universal principles, something where all people are created equal, where all people are treated fairly, all people are treated justly, all people have the same rights as other people. So we're getting there, and it might take a couple thousand years to get there specifically, but it never hurts. So that's the personal intent behind these videos. These laws have certainly changed my life, and I hope they change yours. As we've talked about before, universal laws are something that are true for anyone, anywhere, at any time. It's not something that's true just because you want it to be true, or it's not true because you don't want it to be true. These things withstand the test of time. They withstand cultures. They withstand policies. They withstand individual personalities. They are universal, and they, as long as time exists, will exist. So, we have talked about the law of divine birthright, which is that you exist and have free will. We have talked about the law of proper perspective, basically putting your time and attention into the most important matters first, and then slowly giving your time and attention to the other matters that are perhaps less important, but still important enough to give your time and attention to. As you can see, I don't spend a whole lot of time on my hair, but I did take a shower this morning. So I think I gave it its due attention. Now, did I spend a long time on it? Did I put 4 different types of chemical treatments on it? No, I didn't. Because if you just evaluate me based upon the way my hair is set up, then you're probably more than likely not a deep thinker, and this subject matter wouldn't interest you at all. So no matter if I put blush on or makeup on or combed my hair really well, it wouldn't make that much of a difference. That being said, the third universal law that we talked about was the law of abundance. The law of abundance is very closely related to this law, the law of prosperity. The law of abundance simply states that you have more than you need. And I know living in the 21st century and the latter half of the 20th century, I guess it's not even the latter half, but since the 1980s, I have been exposed to the idea of scarcity. There's not enough. There's not enough. And this is part of what defines us as a primitive society, where there's plenty of money for fighter jets and war throughout all of the world, basically, but there is not enough to make sure that people have a warm bed and have a roof over their heads. And I'm not necessarily just talking about free handouts. I'm just talking about the allocation of resources, where the brightest and the best go. They seem to go where the money is, and where the money is, there tends to be guns, there tends to be bombs, there tends to be things that destroy human life. So again, this is part of a primitive society. Let me say that again, a primitive society. And why I have these little things up behind me is that these are little shingles or tacks or whatever you want to call them, little pieces of paper that enforce the idea or support the idea that I have learned a different way, and that I would like to share that with you. Perhaps you don't have 8 years to dedicate to the subject of metaphysics, but you might have these 10 or 15 minutes. So, the law of abundance, we have more than we need, but guess what? if we even recognize that, how do we allocate it? How do we give it? Well, that's where the law of prosperity comes in. The law of prosperity simply is the allocation of your abundance. Now, again, we're not just talking about physical abundance. If you have $1 million, which isn't a lot in these days, but if you have $1 million, you have an abundance of money. Now, you may not become prosperous because if you just let that sit in a certificate of deposit in a bank earning less than 1% in 18 months, you're not going to feel very rewarded from that investment. You're barely going to stay ahead of inflation, if at all. But if you take that $1 million and you say, hey, I'm going to quit my job, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to get into microloans in the developing world and here in America, because some reason philanthropists always want to go away from America to give their monies, which I think is a ridiculous idea. You know, it's like, hey, everybody in my house is sick, but I'm going to go cure sickness outside of the house. Just shows you how insane and primitive we are as a people. Not saying you can't help people outside of your borders, because the borders are in many respects arbitrary and just thought of in the human perceptions, but it makes a lot of sense to help people where you are and to develop a real good sense of community. In any case, let's continue on with this analogy. So you have this $1 million, and now instead of just leaving it in the bank, you're actually going to loan it out to people. You're going to be nice and you're going to share it. Well, loaning out money typically, in some respects, takes away the generosity, because what you're asking for in return is a certain thing called interest. So one of the things, if you really wanted to be prosperous, you would say, I'm going to lend you this money, and I'd like you to pay it back to me, and the currency minus 20% of what I owe you, and 20% I want you to give back to me in precious metals, because metals actually have the ability to sustain themselves in inflationary periods. They have the ability to stay relatively consistent throughout human civilizations and different policies, because they're still really hard to mine. Whereas printing money now is just up to the Fed and whether they want to do a quantitative easing. Well, guess what quantitative easing is? It is printing millions and millions of pieces of paper that then devalue the currency that you hold in your pocket. So to hedge yourself against inflation so you don't lose money by giving away money, you want to get some of it back in a little bit of metal. Then here comes the most important part, the interest. The way that you have interest on these people that you give loans to is say, I want you to do something generous for somebody else. Don't give a whole lot of commands or dictates. Just encourage them to pass it on. That right there, my friends, is actually prosperity economics, where you're encouraging other people to be generous. And as we'll probably talk about in a few episodes with the law of attraction, you attract what you are, not what you want. So if you want generosity, be generous. If you want to be a philanthropist, be a philanthropist with the pennies and cents that you have, and don't wait until you have millions and millions of dollars. Prosperity is something that also works in non-physical communique. Non-physical things are just as important, if not more so important, than the physical. For instance, if you have a lot of time, which is an abundance, you can become prosperous by doing exactly what I'm doing, sitting down and creating a video that has intelligent, thoughtful, engaging concepts in it that might actually help somebody through a difficult time in their lives. And so by using this medium, I'm putting this out on YouTube for anybody in the world that has access to YouTube. While I'm sleeping, while I'm showering, while I'm going to the bathroom, while I'm working at my 9 to 5, or in my case, my 6 to 5 job, they might be able to benefit from the ideas that I'm sharing to them. Now, these ideas were not ideas that I came up with, but these ideas were ideas that were told to me that I believed in, I put to the test, I experimented with, and discovered that they were true. Now, my job is just to pass it on. Not everybody's going to go through the doors of the School of Metaphysics. Some of you will go through me as a door, and that will be a step in the right direction to you working in harmony with these universal principles. So I'm being generous by simply sharing my time for you, with you. Now, I would like you to go to innerhealthtoday.com if you feel so inclined and donate to support the mission so that more of these episodes can get out. More of my time and energy can be spent towards educating myself and others so that the world becomes a more prosperous, peaceful, and intelligent civilization. But if it doesn't happen, I will still try to squeeze it in when I have the free moments and when I have the free time. The most important thing of this video, though, is to recognize that you have an abundance of time, energy, and resources. And even if it's not in the dollar amounts or the hour amounts that you want, you have free space and time, and you can share that. You can share that with friends, with families, with people that you don't even know, strangers. And through that, you can enrich your life. You'll start to experience full harmony with the universe. And through that, you will be using the universal laws to your benefit and to the benefit of others. Because as you benefit from the universe, your natural inclination is to benefit others. If you take from the universe, if you destroy through greed, hate, and anger and misunderstanding, then your natural consequence is to spread that. It is not what you want, it's what you are. So if you are a parasite on the world, then that is what you give. If you are a assister, a helper, a solving or a very intelligent, loving person, then you spread intelligence and love just naturally through the universal laws. And we'll talk more about how that happens in some of the other episodes. So for right now, just remember that there is an abundance of everything in your existence. And if you want to become prosperous, share. Learn the kindergarten thing and share. Get over your big ego and share. This is Rory Colgan from the Metaphysics Hour, wishing you well, wishing you health, happiness, and peace and prosperity. Until next time, my friends, be love.